Okay, so it is time to start our final drawing. So we're going to be working on the big white sheets of paper, the 9 inches by 12 inches. Okay, we also want to have our sketch that we did yesterday with our design mapped out on it that we can refer back to as we are drawing, right? So the first thing that we are going to do, we don't have a horizon line necessarily on our paper. But we do need to mark where we want our vanishing point to go. So I'm going to start with step 2 of our perspective, and I'm going to put my vanishing point up toward the top here. Remember, I want to make sure that my eye is being drawn to the 2020 with the dimension as I had it planned here. So all my dimension is going to angle back to this top left corner. Now, if you want to, you could put it right in the middle. So that would be if you want it to look like all of your objects are bursting from the center, you would measure in 6 inches and then you would measure up 4.5 inches, and that would be where you would mark your dot if you wanted it in the middle. Again, I don't, so I'm not going to do that. The next step is to draw the shapes that you had on your paper. So remember, I did rectangles and house shapes. So I'm going to start, I have my sketch here off to the side, so I'm looking at that here, and I'm going to draw pretty light. If you press too hard, it'll make grooves that you can't erase that can show up in your shading. Make sure to look at your original sketch to figure out the placement of each shape. You can make adjustments to the positions of your shapes as needed. Again, we are drawing the fronts of our forms first, or the part of the object that faces us or faces the viewer. Look to see where shapes are placed related to each other. For example, there should be a box in the middle of the 2 houses down here at the bottom. When you are drawing a tip, if you want to make sure your lines are perfectly vertical or horizontal, you can line up the edge of your ruler with the edge of your paper. If you are drawing squares or rectangles, try to keep your opposite lines parallel. Remember, you need at least 5 shapes that you will be turning into geometric forms using perspective. Be sure to space out your shapes so you have room to wind your object in between them. You can choose to repeat shapes or draw 5 different shapes. You can choose to draw simple boxes to more complex Tetris-like pieces. For my project, I chose to alternate house, box, house, box. I had the larger shapes closer to the bottom of the page, and then I made my shapes a little bit smaller toward the top to kind of create the illusion of diminishing size or things going back in space. We've got our vanishing point, we've got our 5 shapes. Now it's time to turn them into geometric forms. Now it's time to create our dimension, right? So we're going to do the same thing that we did in our practices. We're going to use the corner check process. So you can start with whichever one you want. Remember, with the corner check process, you are asking yourself, can I connect my corner to the vanishing point with a converging diagonal line without drawing through my object? If the answer is yes, you draw the line. If the answer is no, you skip the point and you move on to the next corner. Be sure to check every corner on each shape. Sometimes you can start the dimension line, but you need to stop it if it runs into another object. For example, between the box here, the far right box, and the house closest to the vanishing point. If you know how deep you want the object to be, you don't need to connect all the way to the vanishing point. You could just draw your line and make sure it aligns with the vanishing point, but stop the line when you know you have drawn enough to make the object as deep as you want it to be. This will save you time when you go to erase after drawing the back of the object. Again, be sure to check the corners on every shape that you drew. So here are all my dimension lines on my different shapes. So then we move on to our last step, which is use parallel lines to end your dimension, right? So I go to my top shape here. Here's the side of my object. I'm going to slide it back as far as I want the house to be, as far back as I want it to go, and then I stop my line, right? And I go up to the top here, to the roof, and I slide it back as far as I want it to go, and I stop my line. Now I can take my eraser, and this is why I said draw lightly so that those lines don't show, right? So So now I can take and erase the lines that I no longer need as part of my object. Now be careful, I over erased. I lost the back of my house here, so I'm gonna go ahead and retrace it. Okay, so then I move on to my box. How far do I want my box to go back here? So I line it up here with the side of my box, and I think I'm gonna give it a little space between the house and the box, and then I'm gonna do the same thing with the top. I line it up with the top, and I slide it, trying to keep it parallel until I meet that line that I just drew. I'm gonna bring that line over, and then anything beyond that I no longer need. So see how this saves me a lot of erasing if I don't connect all the way to the vanishing point, right? Okay, so I've got 2 shapes finished. So now I'm gonna repeat this same process with my remaining shapes. Continue to align with your original edge of your object and slide it back as far as you want it to go. Keep in mind, as you are sliding, you want your depth to be wide enough that you have room to draw holes and openings on the sides of your object for your object to wind through this form. All right, so our goal today should be to get our 5 geometric forms drawn with dimension and end the dimension and know where our vanishing point is, okay? So this is what we want to get done today. Good luck.